Can Europe speak with one voice on how to handle China and its relationship with Russia? We saw on Wednesday Lithuania's foreign minister say that China could not be a credible broker. Lithuania, which has sparred with Beijing over Vilnius's close ties with Taiwan. Well, for more on this, let's cross to the Lithuanian capital. Petras Auštrevičius is member of the European Parliament for the Renew Group. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
Thank you for having me.
What's your reaction to the double act we've seen in Beijing, the French president alongside the president of the European Commission?
Well, I would probably sum up the situation for the time of being as too early to judge. I don't see any yet final result being extracted from the Chinese side, although the European presence is really very, very heavy. President Macron, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, it shows that even the French president is not speaking on his behalf, but I mean, it is a kind of the message from the European Union. But the Chinese side, to my mind, tries to avoid any firm commitment what comes to its future role in Russia's aggression against Ukraine. And it might be many reasons why China behaves this way.
Go ahead, finish your thought, Petras. What do you mean by what are those possible reasons?
Well, I think generally speaking, China plays its own game on the global scale, and any very committed, even conditioned under the Western request, involvement into this war might damage China's reputation, because nobody knows how those negotiations or even mediation from the Chinese side might end up. I think China is very cautious being involved directly into this even peace talks, not knowing exactly what kind of the outcome or feedback from this China might receive. And I believe China is looking forward not to only resolution of this military conflict, which is really, it's not in favor of China, but in fact, we should look a bit broader, because China's interests, political and economic interests, are much more comprehensive. So that's why I think China wants to extract some economic benefits, even from the European Union side. Let's not forget that the so-called investment agreement is stuck. China needs this much. So that's why I think we should look a bit broader and having more comprehensive picture in front of us.
Yeah, China and Ukraine, they are big trading partners. The Ukrainians import a lot. They export coal. They export. Ukraine was, of course, before the war began, a big breadbasket for the world. So, would it be a good thing if Volodymyr Zelensky and Xi Jinping speak on the telephone, for starters?
Definitely. If that contact is established, and President Zelensky and President Xi are speaking directly, I think it would be indeed a step forward, knowing that President Zelensky is very powerful in sending a message, explaining the situation, and requesting for some engagement, cooperation, or assistance. I think it would be a very powerful message from Ukrainian people's side towards China. How much it might change the situation remains to be seen. As I said before, I think China is very cautious to give any commitments so far, not knowing exactly what results and what kind of benefits it might extract out of this.
Now, your foreign minister told the Bloomberg News Agency that China and Russia are aligning themselves, and in their world order, quote, Ukraine is not able to maintain its full sovereignty. Is that something you think that China wants, for Ukraine to be diminished?
Well, I mean, if we look at the so-called 12 points peace plan or propositions presented by China, I see it as a very abstract document. You know, it's not speaking about the Ukraine sovereignty, neither the right of Ukraine to choose its future, its partners, or policy line. I see it. I see it as a very set of abstract principles calling for abstaining from military actions, securing civilians, and so on and so forth. So that's why I think it's not about much about Ukraine. It's probably about some policy line of Russia and maybe China to see the global order a bit different, not led by the West, but getting something out of the situation for better of China first of all, and maybe Russia.
Now, China looks at Ukraine and the way Russia's handling it with an eye to its own standoff with the West over Taiwan. We saw on Wednesday the Taiwanese president meeting with the U.S. Speaker of the House. How hard has China come down on your country? And what would you like to hear Ursula von der Leyen and Emmanuel Macron tell Xi Jinping on that score?
I do hope that President Macron and Ursula von der Leyen made a very clear and sent a clear message to Chinese side that those actions as China behaved against Lithuania once my country started to, advance relations with Taiwan, which is a sovereign right of each and every country. It's not about politics. It's about economic cooperation, about projects of, common interest for many countries, globally speaking. But Chinese acted unilaterally in a most aggressive way, probably seen in a last decade, sending again a clear message that China is getting ready, to assert its interest as much as it needed. And let's not forget, Lithuania, one is of the EU member states. So that was a challenge, not just against Lithuania, but the European Union as such. So that's why I think we see changing China. And if we don't, move appropriately and make it very clear, and I would say even draw red lines for China, so we might meet China in a different corner.
Petras Auštrevičius, many thanks for speaking with us from Vilnius.